Yes, good afternoon, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us here again today. Yesterday, unfortunately, was an anniversary and not a good one. It was a year ago yesterday, on March 4th, 2020, that your former colleague, the finance minister at that time, Bill Morneau, told the House of Commons that they will work with the various sectors to ensure that they have access to the funds needed during this crisis. That will certainly be the case for the aerospace industry. It's now 1 year later, Minister, and now our pilots, our flight attendants, and all other aviation workers are still waiting. So, Minister, I've asked you this many times before. I'm asking you again today. How much longer do these suffering workers need to wait before we see support for the sector?
Mr. Algabra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me go over what our government has done since the beginning of the pandemic. We made a decision from the beginning to roll out direct support to Canadians and broad-based programs that offer support to Canadians, from emergency wage subsidies to SERB, to, by the way, support for small business, to also support for highly affected large businesses. And those programs worked and helped many Canadians. Now, Mr. Chair, with the fall, with then the arrival of the second wave and the introduction of variants, we needed to add extra measures for travel to protect the health and safety of Canadians. And we recognize, Mr. Chair, that because of those additional measures, we need to work on direct support for the airline. So we are currently in discussions with major airlines, Mr. Chair, to provide a customized support for the Canadian airline sector. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Gosi.
Well, thank you, Minister, for that response, and thank you, Chair. Well, I think it's very unfortunate, and I believe the stakeholders that I've talked to in the airline sector would agree that their sector and beyond their sector has been used as a scapegoat and as a punching bag for your government's inability to manage this pandemic. Speaking of stakeholders, this is a quote from last month from the CEO of WestJet. During the course of the decision of the government not to provide funding for ourselves or Air Canada, we've lost 23% of market share to international carriers. And I think that is disgraceful. So I am not alone, Minister, in feeling it is disgraceful how this entire sector has been treated. So my question is, many countries provided sector specific aid to their airline sectors in May and June of last year, almost a year ago, Minister. Why is Canada at least 9 months behind the rest of the world in supporting our aviation sector?
Mr. Algabra.
Mr. Chair, my colleague is correct. Other countries have made different decisions at different times. We, as a government of Canada, made a decision to offer immediate support for Canadians, for workers, for small business, for large businesses that were hard hit. And now I recognize the additional level of anxiety that workers in the aviation sector. We are working, Mr. Chair, on settling or reaching a customized package for the airline sector. And let me say, Mr. Chair, to the workers of the aviation sector that I hear them and I know about their anxiety, and we're working with my colleagues at the Department of Finance, at the Department of Industry, to make sure that we have, and other stakeholders, to find a resolution to this package. Hopefully it will be coming soon, Mr. Chair. But let me just say this. The Conservatives can't have it both ways. They can't say they are against big government programs, and then they say, oh, we want this government program. They can't say, oh, the government is spending too much money. Then they turn around and say, the government should spend more money. Let me say to the workers of the aviation sector, it is the Liberal government that's going to provide support, that has been already providing support and will continue to provide support. The Conservatives are the one who are playing political games with this.
Thank you. Ms. Gosi.
Well, thank you, Minister, and thank you, Chair. They've been waiting for a year now, Minister. Unfortunately, this is not the only area in which your government is failing. Labor negotiations at the Port of Montreal are ongoing, and many fear a strike is imminent. Industry is having to divert shipments as well as face delays. What are you doing to ensure the port remains operational and that these goods make their way to Canadian markets?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree with my colleague about the importance that the Port of Montreal plays, the role that it plays for our economy for Canadians. And we are concerned about this ongoing uncertainty that exists with labor negotiations. As my friend, Minister of Labor, said today in question period, and I know my colleague asked her a question herself, uh, we are very much involved in the ongoing discussions. We've been providing support through mediators. We've been encouraging the parties to reach a settlement. We know that this is an important file. We'll do everything we can. But again, here's where I disagree with the Conservatives. We believe in the collective bargaining agreement process. We want the parties to reach an agreement, but we'll do everything we can to help them get there.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms. Cussy. We're now going to move on
Thank you,
to
Minister. Thank you, Chair.